Okay.
Glass making practices.
Oh, all right. Great.
Yeah.
So I think
You'll be forever a part of our library now.
I knew I had to get in somehow, so might as well be this way, right?
Might as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Ready whenever you go.
All right. Thank you for joining us today. Can you give us your name?
My name's Manuel Quinnones. Middle name's Renee, and everybody calls me Manny.
Manny.
Yes.
Q, right?
Manny Q. Yes.
Were you born in Corning?
Nope. I was born in New York City.
New York City.
I transplanted to the southern tier when I was in first grade. I was just a little boy.
And you've been here ever since?
Well, on and off. I mean, I moved around with the family quite a bit, but the southern tier has really been my home base pretty much almost my whole life. So.
And I read an interesting story about you as a 7th grader making a trip to Vitrix.
Yes.
And do you want to share that story with us?
Sure. Yep. I went. I went to school in Addison. I was going to school at Addison at the time, and we came to Corning for a school trip, and they brought us into Vitrix. And I just remember standing there watching. They were making ornaments. I remember it vividly. They were making ornaments, and it was 3 or 4 of them. And it was the music was loud, and the pace was like nonstop. It was like similar to the fast pace of a very busy kitchen. And the movement, all the sounds, the glass breaking, the water sizzling, and all those sounds that I take for granted now. But at the time, those were all sounds that were like, and I automatically, at the end of the demonstration, does anybody have any questions? And when you're that age, nobody asks questions.
Right.
I put my hand right up. I says, hey, how do I get a job here? I want to work here. And I think I was in 7th grade, maybe even younger. I really don't remember what grade I was in, but it was funny. Everybody laughed, and nobody. They didn't.
You were serious.
I was dead serious. I was like, yeah, I want to work here, and there was all haha, and they escorted us out, and it was years later. It was I had already graduated high school, and I was playing in a band at the time, and my band played across the street. It was playing across the street from Vitrix at some little dive-by that was there, and a fight broke out, and somehow Vitrix's window got broken. And then I remembered, oh, wait, I remember that place. I can go get a job there. So the fall, because at the time I was looking for work. Parents said, you got to get a job. You can't play in a band the rest of your life. So I went in and applied and was not hired. And months later I applied again. I was not hired again. And then another studio opened up next door. Brandon Greenberg it was at the time. And he was looking for somebody to work for him. I guess his assistant was late all the time. And I showed up looking for a job there. And it was one of the mornings that his assistant was late. And he's like, well, my assistant's late again. Let me take your number. He took my phone number, and I went on my way. And then I guess the next day he went over to Vitrix because the studios were next door to each other. So he went over to Vitrix, talked to Tom Beekner, says, hey, I need to find somebody. Do you have any possible applicants? And he handed him a stack of applications, and mine was the top on the list. And he saw my name. Then he went, oh, wait, I think I got this guy's number. And then he had my number. So it was like, all right, this guy's obviously interested. So I started working for Alex. And I guess I expanded my story there, but that's how I got started.
Okay. And so was it a coincidence that it was glass? Were you interested in art? Was it specifically glass that you had?
It was, no, it was, I painted and I drew and I threw pottery, and I was an art major in high school. And my bedroom was always a hideous mess because I always had all these half projects going on all the time. I don't know how my mother put up with it because I was always making something. I was always making a mess, really. But really, I was always painting something or drawing something. It was just how I passed my time when I was little, and I found that to be the most interesting, fun way for me to pass my time. So, and I mean, we lived on a farm, we lived in the country, so I didn't have a lot of kids running around. But when I lived in Puerto Rico, we lived in neighborhoods, and the kids would come by, and I would say, oh, I'm busy, and I'd be drawing or something like that. So glass, really, the glass, I stumbled on the glass more as needing an occupation, needing a job. But I was always creative, and I was always very good with my hands, and that was through my own training. Like I learned real quick how to throw pots on a wheel, and when I started glass blowing, I quickly caught on to the similarities, because there's some real similar properties to molding the glass by hand on a blowpipe. In many ways, it's similar to throwing pottery on a wheel. So the glass was more accidental. The first time I opened the furnace door, I almost took the door right off the furnace because I didn't know how to open the door. And it's on tracks, so I lifted it this way instead of sliding it, and it almost came on. I looked in there. I thought it was hell. I'm like, oh my God! I honestly was scared. I didn't know what I was getting into, but at that point, I was already hired and I was committed. so I didn't go running. There was no turning back at that point. So, but I think because all of my other hands-on glass experience, or not glass, but all my other hands-on crafting experience was real beneficial. Even when I was a little boy, my grandfather was a guitar maker. So he would have me, if you look inside of a guitar, you see little blocks of wood around the edge of the guitar. And I used to have to cut those for him. And they have to be cut all the same size. So I didn't know it at the time, but I was already being trained,
Right.
So yeah, all that experience from my childhood to my teenage years, I think in some subconscious way kind of led me to pick up glass and glass production pretty easy.
And talk to me more about your learning process. How did you begin when you first got that job?
Well, I started simply by just doing the simple things, holding the paddle, putting the pieces away, and just staying out of the way. And that's one of the harder things for people that they really have a passion to get involved. But I found out pretty quick that you're better off just staying out of the way and being quiet, and just be willing to sweep the floor. And that's what I did. I did that for a while, but I think I naturally had an ability to use my hands. I was already good at using my hands, so I caught on pretty quick. I think within a year, definitely within 2 years, but it could have been within a year. I was starting simple pieces, and made my very first piece within the first year I worked there. And it was not pretty, but it held water and it was complete. So
let's fast forward to now.
To now.
What is it that you do? What
Well,
did you say your title was?
I consider myself a glass blower. I'm not the gaffer in our shop. I ended up working for Vitrix 20 some years later. Ironically, yes, ended up getting hired there 5 years ago, and so there I start all the pieces, gather the glass for all the pieces, shape the pieces. Now I don't know if you're familiar with our work there, but a lot of it has decorative elements, decorative bits. So I prepare the main body of the piece, and then I'll pass it along to Tom and Mort, and they'll finish the piece, they'll decorate it and finish it. So that's what I do there. Do all the gathering and all the shaping of the initial pieces.
And talk to me, what does a typical day look like for you?
A typical day is, the worst part of the day is waking up. Once that's done, we'll go into the shop, head into the shop, and we pretty much know what we're going to make. We like to know what we're going to make the day before. I always find it's better to kind of sleep on what you're going to make. It sounds silly, but it does make for a more productive following morning. So we try to talk about it before we leave. We'll set up for the day, and I'm blowing glass by 8:15. I've got my gathers, and I've got the first piece rolling. And ideally, and what people don't realize is, we work in a production setting. It's a small studio, and we make art glass, but our goal is to make all our pieces the same. So although it's less expressive artistically than if we were like goofing around, but we have to make money. So the way we make money is to present a design. The galleries will like it, and they'll order it, and they're going to want the same thing they saw. So it's really important for us to have the discipline to reproduce an item time and time again. And that takes a fair amount of concentration. It takes, because the glass is always moving, and although those pieces all look the same, you don't always take the same path to get the same result. So, and that's typically by my day. By 3 o'clock, I'm ready to be done. Then the last 2 hours, we'll finish up. It's funny because when you hit the 3 o'clock mark, mentally I'm done, but your body takes over. You're already in a rhythm. You're already in a routine, and you're probably producing like the best work of the day, but you're ready to go home. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's what it feels like.
So your pieces are pretty structured a lot of the time. So
yes.
If you had the opportunity to goof around a little with the glass, what are some things that you would want to create?
Well, that's a good question because I'm employed, and I have been employed for most of my career, so I have to hold up a certain level of quality control within my work. So when I get the chance to work for myself, I like to throw all that out the window, and it's not so much about what the final piece looks like. It's more about the fun I'm going to have getting to that point. So I like whimsical shapes. I like little handles and things that kind of look like body parts, maybe not in a morbid sense, but like if you look at one of my vases, it might remind you of somebody standing there with their arms crossed like this, or you'll get a feeling of that kind of reminds me of maybe the form of a fish. So I like playing with form, and I also like playing with color. So I would like to get to the point where and again I'm talking about my own expression. I would like to be able to get to the point where I'm literally throwing the glass, and it's just abandonment, of all convention, and just throwing the glass and seeing what happens, and then finding a way to capture those moments as if the glass was frozen in time. And that sounds easy, but it's not.
Sounds easy to me.
And it's usually not safe. So I would like to someday get to that point. And at this point, I don't think there's any turning back. I think I'm knee deep in glass, so there's no sense of trying to find another career or anything like that. So probably when I'm older, maybe I'll go more towards warm glass or kiln shaped glass, and something that is not as physically demanding. There's options like that. I'll probably make stuff until the day before I die. So if it involves, I'll find a way to do it. So if it involves just having some kilns and throwing the glass in some molds, then I'll find a creative way to do that.
What pieces are you most proud of? Talk to me about some of the things that you've created that you just adore. That's a funny question because I don't like I'm more about getting to the final product than the final product itself. Mm-hmm. That may seem silly, but that's the way I am. So I've never really grown attached to too many pieces I've made. If you go to my house, you would never even guess that I was a glass blower because there's very little glass in my house. I have some pieces in my yard that if the neighborhood kids wanted to steal them, they could. But There are some. A few years back, I made some pieces that I called celestial vessels. I liked those a lot, and they were like blown vases in different heights and colors, a lot of crazy colors, and I would put a stopper, and the stopper would have like the form of some kind of alien head. And at the time, I think my son was into Power Rangers and cartoons like that, Transformers. And I liked stuff that looked like that, that looked like otherworldly. So I really liked those pieces. Nobody else liked them, but I liked them a lot. So when I have a chance, I make some of those, every now and again. And it was all about like exorbitant headgear and things sticking out that didn't look like they belonged, and kind of funky stuff. But I like doing that. And I also like making smaller items like a simple candy dish. I mean, if it's got the nice curve at the bottom, it doesn't get any better than that. A very elegant, delicate foot on the bottom with a nice gentle curve. It looks simple to make, but it's not. And I know what goes into it. I like pieces like that. And I like making goblets. I'm terrible at it, but I like doing it. I like pieces like that. Like one time made a goblet with a dolphin for the stem, and it wasn't the traditional Italian dolphin. It looked like Flipper. It was like a real dolphin, and getting the spots on the dolphin and the color. It was all kind of accidental, but it all came together nicely. That was one of my favorite pieces. I like that one. I don't know where it is today. I sold it. Somebody has it. But that was many years ago. I also made a giant dragon stem goblet once, and it was about this tall. And I made all the parts. That was early on. I had only been blowing glass maybe 4 or 5 years, so I glued the parts together. So I cheated, but I didn't care. And I really like that piece. And somebody has it. I don't know who has it, but that's a one of a kind. I always liked that one. I never hung on to the stuff. I always figured, somebody else is going to like this probably more than I do. So, and those people would show up because these pieces would hang around. Like when I had a chance to make my own stuff, it usually wasn't very sellable. It's usually there was a very small margin of people that were going to like it. So I would hang on to it and take it to shows, display it, and a lot of them were larger pieces, so they would be like flagship pieces. They would attract attention at my booth, and I figured, well, if the one person really likes it, they're going to end up with it. And that's what happened in most cases. I don't have much of my own glass. Even the very first piece that I made, I don't have. I think I gave it to my mother-in-law or something like that. She loved it. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere in the family. I don't know where it is.
So you had applied to Vitrix a couple times and wasn't able to get in. Tell me about how did you get back to Vitrix and begin working there?
Oh, now there's a tortured story. Let's see. There was a short period of time. Now, I have to go back a little bit. How did I end up at Vitrix? I'll tell you. Here's how it happened. There was a time for about 2 years where I didn't blow glass because I was working for myself at the time. I wasn't making enough money. So I went to work for Corning, and I worked at one of the Corning factories. I had a swing shift job, working the graveyard shift one week and the morning shift the next week. I wasn't terribly happy there, but I was making ends meet. And at the time, I was still blowing glass part-time, and actually made a decent living those few years. But what happened was I wanted to get to Steuben, because I figured that was part of Corning. And because I worked at Photonics, that was a different contract. I didn't know this when I signed up for the union. I thought it's the glass workers union, right? Once I'm in, I'm golden. It doesn't work that way. It's a different contract. They weren't going to let me in. And I was very persistent, and badgered and badgered and badgered. And they finally tested me. They broke their rules, and they hired me. And I was the first person hired at Steuben that was not part of their apprenticeship program. So I worked at Steuben. Steuben laid me off after like 9 months. That was during the photonics tank. Corning was going through a bad time, so I ended up getting laid off. Totally enjoyed my unemployment. I had never been unemployed. I grew a beard. It was awesome. But again, my employment was running out. Lost Angel Glass calls me. And I don't know if you remember Lost Angel Glass. Joel DeRicio, my buddy Joel. He knew I was unemployed, so his guy was leaving. He calls me up. And sure enough, it was a job. I did have an offer to go back to work to sweep floors for Corning, but I want to blow glass, So I decided to blow glass for Joel, and I worked for Joel for 5 years, maybe 4 or 5 years, something like that. Don't recall. Bad with numbers. Well, then I heard Steuben was hiring again. I want to get back into Steuben. And you know what? They didn't hire me the second time around. By then, a lot of other younger guys had applied. And for whatever reason, and this is where it gets awful political and sticky, is for whatever reason, they didn't hire me back. So, and I already put in my notice to Joel, so I was stuck without a job. And but lo and behold, Steuben did hire the guy from Vitrix. So that opened up a slot for me. And Tom was like more than happy to bring me aboard. And, they've been great to me ever since. They're excellent place to work. Really good. We have it's a small shop, good camaraderie there. But that was a tough time. It was a tough time in my life because I was in limbo for the, first time. I didn't know where I was going to end up working, but ended up all right, ended up on my feet, and I'm still employed, still doing glass after over 20 years now, so, and those 2 years was the only time I didn't do it full time. But that's how I ended up at Vitrix. It's kind of a long, tortured story. There's many more details to it, but that's the edited version. So it's, a small town like this, one spot opens up, somebody else can slide in, So that's how I'm there. And I might retire there. I might end up going somewhere else. It's just kind of how I roll, I guess.
Do the folks at Vitrix know the story about when you were a school-aged kid?
They do, yes, they do. And it's funny, it's all different people that work there now. So they're actually all younger than me. But they do know the story, yeah.
So what are you going to do when you have a group of kids that come in and one of them wants an application someday?
Well, I got it ready. I just hand it to them, man. I'm not gonna laugh, So yeah, we actually talked about that. I gotta find where the applications are, though.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Manny. It was
All right.
It was great to chat with you.
Okay. I'm long-winded, so
No.
I'm a talker,